Again, welcome back as we're moving right along. And what do we do on Wednesdays? 12:35, the great Ken Bombace. Ken has got I'll tell you, Ken is one of our regular contributors now. You hear him every Wednesday at 12:35. But let me tell you, folks, look at this resume. CEO of Global Threat Solutions, Security Consulting. They do protection services. You know, we could talk about anything with this guy. I mean, we got Ukraine. I want to talk about the border now, what's going on with Article 42 there, Title 42, that the Supreme Court has left in place for now. Ken is also a former Army intelligence captain. He led counterinsurgency operations in Samarra over there in Iraq, retired criminal intelligence detective, professor of criminal justice at Farmingdale. Also served in Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall. Very happy to have him. You've been listening to Ken. I know we get a lot of emails and text messages. People enjoy listening to his background and expertise. But let me say hello. Ken Bombace, how are you today, my friend?
Great, Tom. How are you? Thanks for having me on today.
Always a pleasure. When you come on, we got so many different things to talk about. You know, sometimes we color outside the circles when you come on, you know, talking about a lot of this international stuff that are going on. But I did read this morning that there were 20,000 people holed up in Mexico right now that were waiting for Title 42 to be lifted. And a lot of it had to do with the mere fact that they were going to seek asylum. But the program for asylum was never meant to be what's happening right now. Right now, that is the way in which to get into this country. Do you really need asylum? Is your life threatened? Is your political rights threatened? Is pressure from the government where you're coming from? Are they driving you to a certain point to get out and so on? It almost seems like, or domestic violence to a large extent. What's happening there is that it's been used as an excuse. But some were waiting for Title 42, figuring they'd have a better chance of coming in and that the United States will let more people in. What is the implications now that it looks like the Supreme Court is keeping 42 in place?
So, yeah, this is an interesting topic. And just to touch on what you mentioned with political asylum, it's something we've spoken about before. And it's something that has been so manipulated and abused in this country. And quite frankly, our government's allowed it to happen. You know, political asylum, I even remember from being younger that was like somebody coming from Cuba or somebody maybe fleeing the Soviet Union, right, who was literally, they felt, being targeted by their government for their political views. And now it's become, well, the United States is better than my country, so I want political asylum. And that's never what it was intended to be. And we all know that. Our government knows that. And we allow it to happen. I think the number is, out of the people who actually are filing for political asylum, we let into this country in this purgatory state, only 5% of them actually get political asylum. The system is so broken that that's just one part of our immigration rules that need to be fixed. But as far as this Title 42 goes, you know, I can kind of see both sides of this argument. You know, the one thing is, you know, Democrats are now saying, well, COVID, this was put in place because of COVID, so it should be lifted. And the Republicans are saying, well, because our system is so broken and we have this massive crisis on the border, we want this kept in place until there's a lawsuit by multiple Republican-led states to keep this in place until the rules are fixed. Now, I see both sides. I can understand. It's fine. If this was meant for COVID and people are arguing that COVID is no longer right now a crisis, well, then fix the system. The answer isn't just to lift it and have this 20,000 people who have amassed just pending the pending decision that this might be lifted. That's not the answer. We have a bad enough crisis down there right now. And the last thing in the world we need to do is just lift that without any other changes to our immigration system. The fact that these border states are taking the brunt of this right now, and leaders from other states are saying, well, let's lift this. It's not just. I don't think that's fair, and it's definitely not. It's not good for our national security at this point. And I would go one step further, Tom, and say that, you know, this is a public health law from 1944. It's been used sparingly, to say the least. President Trump used it, obviously, for COVID. But I would say that why hasn't somebody made the argument, it's all right, well, let's use this same Title 42 section and say that fentanyl is a public health crisis right now. And it is. We're losing hundreds of people a day. No one's even made that argument. If COVID is no longer a good enough reason to keep Title 42 in place, why don't we try fentanyl? But there's got to be a better answer than let's let everybody in and lift this and make this country even less safe than it is right now.
It almost seems like there's a dual purpose to this whole thing. Yes, I mean, I'm in agreement with you. And I love the idea about the fentanyl epidemic that's taking place. They're estimating 100,000 overdoses a year in the United States that are resulting in fatalities. We're seeing that all over the country. It's absolutely horrific, and it is coming through the southern border. Should the whole idea of a moratorium on asylum seekers be done? Because none of us, myself included, believe that every single one of those people come in and have a legitimate asylum request. I don't think they do. I think it's just the new method of getting into the United States of America. And it's something that we need to look at, but no one seems to even move in the direction of a new protocol for asylum seekers. I believe the folks in Afghanistan needed it when we flew out of there. They were hanging on planes. Remember that? They were hanging on planes. It was horrific to watch it. They, I believe, should have been granted, in many instances, asylum. They helped us. They put their lives at risk. And look what's happening there today. The women were ordered out of the universities. Taliban promised us through their State Department channels, oh, we're not going to go back to the old ways. They're back to the old ways. And yet those people have a real legitimate request for asylum because they're going to be murdered or they're going to be put in re-education camps. And the women there are back to their second-class citizenship, if you could even call that, if it even amounts to that. So we have horrific conditions all over the world, and yet we have a border now that they say there's 20,000 people waiting in Mexico that are now going to come across, and many of them are probably going to come across illegally. Ken?
Yeah. So, what you mentioned, possible like a dual purpose. What is the motivation behind lifting this? And like with what's going on at the border right now, the disaster we see every day with terrorists coming across, fentanyl coming across, gang members, criminals, why is lifting Title 42 our priority right now, especially on the Democrat side? Why is this sort? And we could only speculate, but I think it's clearly there's a political motivation behind everything that's happened at the border since this administration took office. This is not a gradual thing. It was overnight. We didn't have this problem 2 years ago. We did not have this crisis on the border 2 years ago. This is a policy problem that was created by this administration right now. And I think the speculation is obvious that if Title 42, it's estimated right now, if Title 42 is lifted, we could see 14,000 border crossings per day, 420,000 per month, 5.1 million a year. And Tom, this could change the political landscape in this country. I mean, we've had some very close elections, even on the national stage, on the national level right now. And at the same time, we're seeing this crisis, which seems crazy that no one in Washington is doing anything to stop it, not least of which is our White House. And why would they be doing this? Well, there's also a whole movement in Washington, D.C. to expedite giving these people citizenship. So all you could think about is that this is possibly about electoral politics, that they're trying to bring in all of these people across the border. Do we really think right now that Nancy Pelosi is just really so torn up and worried about these people at the border? That's what this is all about? Or is there a bigger meaning to this? Is there a political meaning to this? It seems pretty clear that there has to be a political motivation because I'll tell you, Tom, there is no logic to why this would be happening. It almost feels to me this President Biden, who has historically been somewhat moderate, that he's been hijacked by far left progressive people, and they're using him as like an expendable president. Like, I can't imagine that with the constant attack this president has on how he's doing nothing at the border, and he's creating so much danger in this country, that President Obama would ever have allowed this to happen, that he would ever allow his legacy to be destroyed over this insanity that we're watching, that no one's lifting a finger to stop. It seems like that he's been put up to this, and it's like they're going to get as much done in 4 years, far left progressive policies under his reign, and then he's gone after that. That's kind of what it seems like.
Interesting, the mere fact that, and how your observation of what's happened at the southern border, because I think the intensity of what's been taking place has happened in the last 4 weeks, because we're seeing the human element to this whole thing, and the mere fact that the law enforcement agency down there, the Customs and Border Patrol, doing the best they could, bringing those folks in, putting them into El Paso. They're sleeping on sidewalks. They're sleeping in shelters. They're trying to muster up enough food. They're giving them MREs, meals ready to eat, and all of that. But it's not an answer. This is putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage here, and it's just not working. And I think all of us in this country, the law-abiding, common-sense American is getting very upset about this, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. We had the worst weekend ever with the winter weather and so on. And where is Joe Biden today? He's in St. Croix. He needed a vacation, so he went to the warmest area on the globe right now. And, when you start to think about that, I mean, that's the Marie Antoinette let them eat cake philosophy. And again, as far as Joe Biden's concerned, I don't think he thinks people are concerned about that. If you ask him, he's doing a great job, and I truly believe he believes he's doing a great job. And I think in a few weeks, contrary to what I believe you just said, I think he's running again in 3 weeks. Your thoughts on that? He's going to announce, he's going to announce that he's in 3 weeks that he is running again. Yeah.
I agree with you on that. I don't think he's going to win, but I think that I do agree with you that he's going to announce that he's running, and I think that sometimes people believe the lies that they're told, and I think you're right. I think he might actually think he's doing a great job. It's the people around him, the people that are handling him, that I think know that. I mean, what's going on in this country right now? His approvals are really, really low, and I think that they don't care. I don't think they ever anticipated when they supported Joe Biden that he'd be around for another term after this. And I think what they're doing is because he's been so accepting and supportive of these really progressive policies, they're going to use him for everything he's worth. And they're trying to get through as much as they can in 4 years. And that's why, this is illogical. When you see every day in these press conferences, people hammering them on the border, and it's a clear crisis. The whole country believes it. We see it. You see the pictures every single day, and they do nothing. They won't even visit. It's not logical. Any other president would be much more reactive to this, I think. So it's, it's a shame to see this happening like this. And by the way, I'm completely in support of a bipartisan solution. That's what it should be. Let's get immigration reform worked out by both sides. However, in the meantime, first, before you can do that, you have to stem the flow. You have to secure our border, protect Americans, stop the fentanyl from flowing through, stop the terrorists from getting through, and the gang members and the criminals, and stop destroying these border towns and states with this constant flow. And then let's have our leaders, our elected officials, sit down and come up with a solution to this that everyone agrees on. But right now, first, you have to secure that border.
Securing the border, something that we don't see talked about too much. I know there were some Republicans in Congress talking about a John Kennedy approach, the Alliance for Progress with Central and South America, where countries like Venezuela and El Salvador, we would work an economic agreement between them where we could help them financially. And I know the American people right now, are you kidding me? How many countries are we going to help with our tax dollars? But at the same time, if we could help those countries economically, I'm not saying that I'm in favor of this. I think it should be looked at, somehow have like I said, a Kennedy Alliance for Progress, so that these folks are not walking thousands of miles to get out of these wretched countries where they live in absolute misery, and then come across the border and said, I'm here for asylum, when in reality you're here because the country is it's not a good country. I think Donald Trump called them something that I can't say on the radio, but those countries are not the best places in the world to live. But if they could be built up, or an alliance for progress, an economic alliance with the Central and South American countries, do you think something like that could work? Because nothing else is working. You got 20,000 people ready to cross the border, and they're going to be welcome. They come across could you imagine an immigration system that says you have to cross a river in barefoot to get here? What the heck kind of immigration system is that? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The first answer, as far as stemming the flow, 2 years ago we had it. Let's just do what they did. Let's do what they did until we figure out a solution to this. We didn't have this problem 2 years ago, so let's first adjust our policies the way they were until we figure out a long-term solution. As far as Central and South America and these countries, we've supported these countries for years financially, decades, financially. And I'm not opposed to that as part of an overall strategy, trying to help these governments. I mean, essentially what we're saying is make these countries, improve these countries' standard of living so that people aren't trying to flee so desperately. But the problem is, one thing, Thomas, these countries have a culture of corruption. Do we know where that money is going to go and how it's going to be used? Is it really going to improve the lives of those people down there, especially to a level where they're going to say, you know what, I no longer want to go to the United States. It's so great here in Venezuela. I'm not sure that that's the solution. It's definitely not the entire solution. We could explore working with those governments to try and create, even with funding, to try and improve the standard of living. But that isn't the answer. We've done that for decades, and it's everyone. Everybody still wants to, from those countries, is still striving to come here. The difference is the policies that were changed when this administration took office really gave a motivation for people to surge at the border. We've seen it. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. These people lining up, and we know that the numbers of people, encounters, and the people crossing the border are far, far higher than they were 2 years ago. So in the first place, I think it's a policy problem we're facing right now, and a policy problem that was intentionally put in place by this administration. First, we need to address that before we start throwing billions of dollars to Central and South America. Like you said, already in Ukraine and the rest of the world, we're a country that's suffering economically. We have to slow down with that, and I've supported this mission with Ukraine from the very beginning. But now I am saying it's time to stop. Time to stop until we see some of these allies start to step up and pay their fair share. We don't have an endless pit of money that we could constantly be distributing around the world right now, especially when we have so many problems at home.
Right, particularly when it comes down to the aid to the Central and South American countries. Just switching over to Ukraine really quick. Word is Putin is willing to negotiate, but I don't see what a negotiated settlement can be here. Is he going to pull out? He's not going to pull out, no matter what it takes, or how many Russians he loses, or how many Ukrainians get killed, and so on. The whole idea of Putin willing to negotiate, is that real?
I think there might be some basis to it that, let's face it, he's suffered defeat after defeat on so many levels. He's become desperate on so many levels and made threats. I think that he would be. The problem we face is it would have to be a solution that saves him face and shows his people that he's gained land. He's taken key strategic land from Ukraine. And Ukraine, on the other hand, not only doesn't want to give up 1 square foot, but they want any negotiation to include Russia and Vladimir Putin being held accountable for what they've done, and that includes war crime tribunals. So I think it's almost a non-starter at this point, Tom. Where do we start these negotiations if both sides have made it very clear that they're not going to, that they have certain things they will not negotiate away?
Is politics playing into the Republicans versus Democrat lack of unity that we have in terms of the amount of money that's being spent in the Ukraine?
Oh, totally. And until very recently, it was about $40 billion that we had already given to Ukraine. I was very much still in support. And I say these Ukrainians are fighting for all of us right now. We're not spilling blood. We should be able to finance them because this is important to all of us, this fight against Russia. However, most recently, when we saw Zelensky visited D.C., we immediately gave him $2 billion and some Patriot missiles, which I was okay with. But now there's talk of pledging another $40 billion, which would bring us around the $100 billion mark. And when you look at major NATO allies like France and Germany have given like $1 billion or 1.5, and we've given far more than many times more than the entire EU. I have a problem with that. This is a problem that President Trump had tried to address, that NATO is not paying their fair share. There's supposed to be a certain percentage of GDP that NATO members are supposed to put towards their military, and they have not historically. He tried to fight that, made some progress, and right now no one's even discussing it. Why are we giving any money until they step up? Let's face it, Germany and France and these mainland European countries, they have more at risk than we do. This is their neighbor where this is happening. And why are we always fronting the bill, especially when we have a lot of issues right here at home right now? I think we've given enough And we should at least see our allies step up a bit before we contribute anymore.